Using his unique jumping skill, the protagonist is able to conquer any topography with ease. He's excited to use this skill to defeat the crystal scorpions. He activates all his combat skills and leads the horde of monsters towards a valley, where they fall to their death. The protagonist dubbed this move the Crimson Scorpion Falls, as he managed to kill the enemies without even having to battle them. As he watches the horde fall, he feels relieved knowing he was never caught in the crossfire. After teleporting, the protagonist experiences pain in their back. They wait for their MP to recover, while reflecting on the safety of waiting in their current location versus being out in the open. They decide to wait until the crystal scorpions thin out before teleporting again. Using various skills, the protagonist jumps from rock to rock and reflects on the physics of jumping in mid-air. While climbing the crystal cliffs, the protagonist realizes they did not receive any XP points after defeating all the crystal scorpions. They consider two possibilities: fleeing from battle or the potential presence of a rare, mutated monster. They come across an inverted crystal scorpion, larger and more dangerous than the others. Despite the danger, the protagonist is excited for the opportunity to fight a rare enemy. Upon seeing the fearsome monster, the protagonist couldn't help but question the sanity of its creator, but they also couldn't deny the impressive effort put into its design. As they faced off against the golden scorpion, they knew it wouldn't be an easy battle. Its size, strength, and aggressive behavior demanded a new strategy. The scorpion's claws and stinger were devastatingly powerful, and its golden crystal body was near impenetrable. The added ability to freely spray venom only added to the challenge. Despite hours of fighting, the protagonist refused to give up. They observed the scorpion for weaknesses and devised a plan to strike its vulnerable spots while avoiding its deadly attacks. With their MP and recovery items running low, the protagonist hoped their perseverance would pay off in the end. Despite the first dagger bouncing off, the protagonist remained calm with a second one at the ready. The scorpion's attack left a crack in the crystal floor that sent small pebbles flying. The protagonist managed to avoid an attack from the scorpion's tail and found refuge amongst the rubble. They changed their weapon to Yuzuki for the extra critical hit and HP restoration abilities. Mid-air jumping and skywalk became crucial in the battle, allowing the protagonist to attack the scorpion's tail. They used their abilities to keep the aggro off them and evade poison attacks. Unfortunately, spamming attacks depleted their stamina bar, forcing them to resort to transfer inventory to recover. Once ready, they attacked the scorpion again with a pile bunker-like move, followed by Yuzuki's Moon Aura ability that successfully severs the scorpion's tail. The protagonist eagerly collects the stinger and places it carefully in their inventory. Although it was nerve-wracking, they could finally relax and collect the materials. As the moon sets and the sun rises, the protagonist ponders on how to be better prepared for future battles. Despite not having a manual or reading too deeply into wiki pages, the protagonist understands the game's AI well enough to know that the golden scorpion has similarities to the crystal scorpions. With a loud distraction, the protagonist draws the attention of these enemies towards the golden scorpion, allowing them to face each other while the protagonist stays safe. Upon exiting the inventory, the protagonist is surprised to find the golden scorpion still alive, despite fighting off the crystal horde, albeit in a state best described as half-dead. Mysterious fumes leaked from the cracks of the golden crystal, weakening it. The golden scorpion's victories were due to sheer power rather than strategy. A group of crystal scorpions fled from the fight, but the rare enemy's unique AI made it determined. Despite being half-dead, it remained dangerous. The protagonist was filled with determination and activated their skills, narrowly dodging the golden scorpion's attacks. After a long search, the protagonist finally found a solution. They gouged out the creature's eyes and delivered a final blow, causing it to glow brightly before it died. The protagonist was relieved to be done with the fight and wanted to rest. Despite the fact that the golden scorpion's eyes had been gouged out, The threat it poses should still be close to zero, as it can no longer target the protagonist directly. The scorpion is reduced to hurling attacks in a random fashion which can be easily anticipated and exploited. In order to ensure victory and make things more exciting, the protagonist takes a high-risk, high-reward approach, even though chance is involved. The scorpion's attacks lack aim, allowing the protagonist to get closer and inflict more damage. With the aid of a time bomb, the protagonist defeats the scorpion, blowing it away with a satisfying explosion. While the battle was a war of attrition, the protagonist emerges victorious, feeling euphoric and triumphant. After gathering materials and picking up their belongings, the protagonist considers using the scorpion's materials to enhance weaker weapons. The protagonist triumphantly collects golden crystal shards left behind by their defeated enemy, feeling a sense of accomplishment that surpasses their experiences in lesser games. However, they are faced with a dilemma about how to get back to the main city without walking. As they contemplate, a wave of crystal scorpions approaches, providing the perfect incentive to run. After a successful escape, the protagonist reunites with their companion Emul and heads to Break's workshop. Break is amazed by the rare and valuable items the protagonist has gathered, including the crystal nucleus of the golden crystal scorpion. They suggest using some of these items to enhance the legacy weapon. Break faints from excitement, but all laugh it off. Later, the protagonist takes a ride in their power suit, but loses interest in the game for a few days after this adventure. After a grueling battle, the protagonist escapes from the virtual world back to reality. Despite waking up extremely early, insomnia is a greater concern. The protagonist's little sister notices his exhausted state and offers words of encouragement. Feeling slightly better, the protagonist decides to try something different and ventures into the world of Nephilim Hollow, a difficult but enjoyable mecha fighting game. The game requires the player to use their mind to control the robot completely, making it an immersive and challenging experience. Though difficult, the protagonist is excited for the challenge and excited to try something new. In order to climb the ranks of this game, precise maneuvering and combat at ultra-high speed was necessary. Some players piloted frames together to ease the amount of input to watch out for. The game had a high learning curve and difficulty, making it more enjoyable to watch than play. The protagonist's hunger for mecha action led him to try out his old game, Nephilim Hollow. He selected his custom frame, the Kingfisher, which had been stripped of unnecessary armor for maximum speed. The Kingfisher required the protagonist to defeat opponents in around 3 minutes or less. Rust, one of the top-ranking players, challenged the protagonist to a duel. The protagonist accepted without hesitation, determined to beat him this time. A red frame, the Phoenix, appeared as Rust's most trusted frame. The protagonist and Rust launched into battle. After losing a match, the protagonist screamed in frustration at the attention of other players. They realized too late that once their thrusters were damaged, they were as good as dead. The protagonist contemplated the importance of good equipment in the game, especially in light of the ever-changing meta. Despite being approached by a hostile player, the protagonist was able to make amends and even accept a challenge to a rematch. The protagonist now aims to improve their Nephilim before facing Rust once again. To build a Nephilim, 3 crucial steps must be taken. The first is to capture a wild Nephilim, and fortunately, most of them are still active upon landing, meaning they'll attack any perceived threats. Next, the machine must be equipped with custom parts, allowing players to play dress-up with their towering machines. Finally, the Nephilim needs a unique name and must be registered to their owner. Meanwhile, Super Gutsy Man eagerly sought out Kingfisher, once known for destroying the ranking ladder. His new frame, Fiddler's Club, was designed for the thrill of battle, and he couldn't wait to challenge Kingfisher's new creation, piloted by Sanraku. The fight was intense, but Super Gutsy Man was determined not to suffer yet another defeat. Sanraku learns that the Phoenix is a monster frame, with an unpredictable maneuverability due to its asymmetrical boosters. However, it's the skills of the pilot that make the Nephilim terrifying. Rust is a naturally born genius, with exceptional piloting skills that make her almost invincible in combat. She and Mold work together, making it almost impossible to beat them in 1v1 battles. Sanraku receives a battle record of Phoenix and builds a new frame, the Fiddler's Club, for his fated battle with Phoenix. Rust declares war with a message and heads towards Sanraku's location. They face off, and Rust recognizes that the Fiddler's Club is a heavy-class Nephilim with a minimal left arm and back. Rust tries to determine the headpiece's capabilities, and the battle begins. The Fiddler's Club disappears using optical camouflage, but Rust follows the illuminated boosters and starts firing her Gatling gun. The Fiddler's Club tries to get in range for a melee attack, but is split into 8 parts, signifying defeat. Nephilim Hollow remains undefeated, and Rust and the spectators are left shocked. Rust confronts the protagonist after their battle, demanding another match. However, the protagonist teases Rust with the idea of figuring out what happened themselves. The score is now even after this new battle, but the protagonist suspects Mold understands what really took place. The protagonist reveals that their Fiddler's Club utilized a jamming sensor to cause the defeat of Rust and Mold. Even though Rust was paying attention to the thruster images, she still couldn't properly retaliate. The only ones who could understand the situation were viewers or people like Mold. Rust analyzes the situation during the new battle and soon realizes that the protagonist knows how to execute invisible movements. The protagonist reveals that Fiddler's Club used a new accessory called the gravity buoy, which was disguised as an additional arm as the secret to their trick. The Fiddler's Club has a new trick up its sleeve, and it's not hoping to rely on the same one more than once. With its latest jammer and camouflage technique, it can switch from a biped to a quadruped and equip arms on every one of them. But its mobility suffers due to increased weight, and fuel usage requires smart management. The Phoenix is a tough opponent for its mid-air skills and overall experience, but the Fiddler's Club has a kill or be killed tactic up its sleeve. Using optical camouflage and jamming sensors, it approaches the Phoenix and releases a capture net, using it to predict and prepare for its attack. The stake driver and 6 blades prove to be too much for Phoenix, which explodes in an effective fashion, bringing a nasty smile to the Fiddler's Club's pilot. In the end, the protagonist emerged victorious with a score of 3 wins and 2 losses. Rust, despite hiding her emotions, seemed to understand the outcome. The Fiddler's Club was a challenge, equipped with a variety of strategies and tactics. No matter the approach, victory was elusive. The protagonist reminisced about other glitch-ridden mecha games and their frustrating meta. As Rust pleaded for him to continue playing, the protagonist couldn't find the motivation to do so. However, Rust's interest in mecha games was revealed, and the protagonist regretted mentioning Shangri-La Frontier. Despite not being obligated to respond to Rust's requests, the protagonist finds himself lacking the necessary social skills to talk his way out of the situation. He contemplates using extreme measures, but his good alignment and love for Shanfro prevent him from doing so. In a sudden turn of events, Rust drops the name of a unique monster from Shanfro and challenges the protagonist to a fight to reveal information about it. The protagonist suspects foul play, but decides it's worth a shot. During their next encounter, Rust manages to destroy the protagonist's robot and reveals herself to be a formidable opponent. Despite being outmatched, the protagonist is determined to come out on top. Rust destroyed Fiddler's Club with her new mecha frame, earning a self-satisfied smile. The protagonist promised to help build a more Kingfisher-like frame, but worries about lacking the necessary parts. To gain more information about the unique monster, Rust wants to try out a maker armor frame that belonged to someone else. Though hesitant due to the risk, the protagonist agrees. With little information about the unique monster, they search for a specific quest related to it. However, until they complete the Eeks quest, Punching the Apostle of the Abyss, they cannot use any information for negotiations. Upon logging into Shangri-La frontier, the protagonist is informed by their companion Emul that someone other than them has triggered a flag for the invitation to the Bunny's Country quest. This poses a threat to his advantage in the game if this other player spreads information about the quest. Frustrated, the protagonist logs out to search the internet for any information, but finds none. Upon logging back in, they set out to find this other player, Akitsu Akane, who is currently waiting for an audience with the king. The protagonist splits up with Emul and heads to Brake's workshop to retrieve an important order for an RTA. To reach Fifthshire in time, the protagonist needed to clear the ancient ruins and another exploration zone quickly. He knew he couldn't do it alone and needed a hired hand, someone who wouldn't ask questions. Feeling guilty for using someone, he left his friend Emul to keep tabs on a skilled player named Akitsu Akane, knowing the success of his mission depended on this person. The protagonist considered inviting Akitsu to his guild, but also wanted to recruit Rust and Mold, strong players he'd recently lost to. Checking his level, he was shocked to see he was now level 99 extended, with an impressive set of skills and weapons. Having reached level 99, Sanraku sets his sights on Fifthshire and plans to dash through the dungeon towards it. The reason for his urgency is a quest with Rust and Mold, who he promised to meet there the following day. They require the Kutanid of the Abyss to allow Rust to ride power armor, so Sanraku must verify its accuracy by completing the Punching the Apostle of the Abyss quest. However, his plans are interrupted by a huge machine that declares it will exterminate him. The protagonist faces off against the rare enemy Iron Golem Omega security drone in the dungeon. Though initially considering avoiding the fight, his body is already in attack mode, and he decides to test out his legacy weapon, the Gilter Brill, a pair of fighting gauntlets created by Grandmaster Smith Brake. With their SF design and golden glow, the protagonist is excited to use them, believing they're a perfect fit for his skills in fight and hand of fortune. As a mercenary, he appreciates the flexibility to switch between bladed weapons and gauntlets for different sources of damage. The protagonist boasts of his proficiency with weapons, having tried and excelling with various types. He faces off against a golem with his unique fighting style and defeats it by attacking its knee and landing critical hits. Despite his victory, the protagonist is frustrated with the long battle that took almost 20 minutes, considering the golem to be an ordinary enemy, not a boss monster. Sanraku encounters an overseer golem in a high-level endgame area. The boss is large and made up of junk and debris, with the ability to change its characteristics on the spot. Sanraku manages to defeat it in 20 minutes, but realizes that battles with enemies that self-heal can drag on into a war of endurance. The boss drops an item that Sanraku plans to take to Brake later on. As he enters the boss arena, Sanraku equips his swamp daggers to test their efficacy. The boss emerges, and Sanraku starts his usual opening skill combination, throwing in a few new skills just for fun. He has perfected his mobility and laughs as he evades the Overseer Golem's attacks. Sanraku aims to beat the world record for time attack of 1 minute, but his priority is to get behind the boss. As the secret sword Art Water Mirror Moon evolved, its effect changed dramatically. Instead of spawning a clone behind the enemy, it spawned a new source of aggro in front of it. Despite this change, the protagonist adapted and used it to climb up the back of the Overseer Golem to destroy its weak spot, an excavation wheel. Though it required the activation of multiple skills, including Greater Climbing and Divine Blessing of Scorpion, the protagonist succeeded in destroying one fork and growing a stake out of the other using the power of the Crystal Scorpion. With this stake, the protagonist was thrown high into the air. Weapons from the era of the gods harness the power of their materials to enhance their abilities. Take the left gauntlet, for example. Upon impact, its small stinger can transform into a 3-meter crystal pillar, useful for mid-range combat, terrain destruction, or fast movement. The protagonist uses this to great effect, shortening climbing time and jumping over an obstacle. In a dangerous situation, they use their daggers to crack and destroy the golem's fork, then jump onto its shoulder and deliver a double sledgehammer attack to the head. Although thrown off, the protagonist uses the inventory to escape unscathed. Thanks to their mastery of the god's technology, fall damage is no longer a concern. With a loud crash, the steel wheel landed on the overseer golem's core, causing it to scream in agony. The protagonist, having used Skywalker to negate the fall damage, managed to land safely. The golem's weakness was a silly gimmick, causing the protagonist to feel a little sad that they wouldn't gain any experience points. Quickly grabbing the bluish ingot, they headed towards their meeting place, where they encountered Saiga Zero, one of the strongest players in the game. As they awaited their mysterious meeting partner, their curiosity grew. When the person finally arrived, Saiga Zero's eager acceptance of their invitation signaled to the other players that it was a date. Sanraku, a level 99 mercenary with dual-wielding skills, had 1,000 mani and impressive stats, including 900 endurance, 129 luck, and several powerful skills and equipment. He was set to meet a holy knight at the famous landmark Fallen Giant's Sword, but was nervous about her intimidating presence. He apologized for being late, though she had just arrived herself, and they set off on their mission. Though grateful for the support, Sanraku couldn't help but be scared of his partner's enthusiasm. The area resembled the ancient ruins, but it was a former battlefield with moss-covered remains of huge weapons and strange devices. The ruins were distinctively different from any Japanese or Western-style formations. In the distance were the ruins of a massive formation, most probably a castle or other fortress. Sanraku speculated that a relic from the era of the gods was here, and the Omega symbol seen at the secret laboratory may have been a mechanical creation designed to slay the owners of those giant weapons. Sanraku wanted to gather information on the EX quests and the mysteries of the world they unveiled. Meanwhile, Saiga Zero suggested he call her Rei, since Saiga Zero was a mouthful. Sanraku agreed, and they continued on their journey with the sound of swords cutting through the air. As they continued through the ruins, the protagonist pondered the importance of gaining knowledge about their surroundings. With Rei's assistance, he began to learn more about the area and the dangers that lay ahead. But as impressed as he was with her skills, he couldn't help but wonder about her motives. Despite her humble nature, he was wary of revealing too much information. Regardless, he continued to rely on his own instincts and experience to navigate through the ruins, dodging attacks from powerful monsters left and right. Through it all, he couldn't help but marvel at the unique experiences that playing this game had given him and the sense of growth and accomplishment that came with it. Sanraku is tired of enemies always running away from him, but he's hesitant to lift the curse on his body, even though it's preventing him from wearing armor. Rei suggests meeting the NPC, Iristelia, who can cure all curses, but it's a difficult task. Saiga Zero guides Sanraku towards their goal, but unknown to him, her feelings for him are turning into a lie. Meanwhile, a person is running away from trouble, but that's a tale for another time. In this area lies the notorious Dragon Usurper as the boss, a tricky opponent who uses steel magic to snatch and shoot back attacks. Furthermore, as a dragon-type monster, it can fly and breathe fire, making it important to know when to defend. Once the boss reaches a certain HP threshold, its behavior and patterns will change, attempting to steal weapons from the player. Despite being lost in the area, the protagonist finds solace in the beautiful scenery of the game and tries to change the topic. Soon after, they encounter Animalia and a group of heavily equipped players, ready to capture a zone and prepared to fight. The situation becomes hostile as Animalia accuses the protagonist of hiding something and suggests burning down rabbits. Rei understands the situation and the protagonist promises to leave in exchange for an explanation. The SF Zoo members approach with an unsettling air about them, claiming to have knowledge about the EX quest the protagonist has been hiding. Despite feeling uneasy, the protagonist plays along as they reveal their plan to defeat night prowler Lucan. However, the SF Zoo members are unaware of crucial details, leading to a potential trap set by the conniving Penselton. As the wind blows coldly, the group realizes they all seek to defeat the same unique monster. In the darkness, the night prowler Lucan emerged, its black body and golden eyes striking fear into everyone present. Its existence was a broken and terrifying chunk of data, overwhelming in its approach of death. None dared to underestimate it, especially not after encountering its power before. The members of SF Zoo had a plan, utilizing their strongest defense through their tanks while their debuffers attacked from behind. However, even with this strategy, Lucan proved to be too cunning and powerful, and the battle was sure to turn ugly. Despite this, the group remained composed, ready to face whatever came their way. Lucan disappears into the darkness and reappears behind a tank, attacking mercilessly. Despite the tank's strong defenses, Lucan is able to smash one with ease. The group of magic casters try to immobilize Lucan with their spells, but Animalia steps forward with a unique weapon, the Key of Hades. However, Lucan's expression suggests that it won't be captured easily. The protagonist hypothesizes that Lucan is able to unite with the darkness of space itself, and attacks using an invisible alter ego triggered by the disappearance of moonlight. Lucan proves the hypothesis correct by mercilessly attacking Animalia in perfect darkness. Animalia doubts that they can defeat the powerful, unique monster, but SF Zoo's strategy immobilizes even the strong, phantasmal dragon. Animalia approaches the night prowler with her unique weapon, but using it leaves her vulnerable for 5 minutes. She is driven by her love for animals since she suffers from severe allergies in real life. The realistic world of Shangri-La Frontier lets Animalia get to know and collect data on these creatures. However, she realizes Lucan is not just an animal, but the darkness in the form of a predator.